the number of people using the internet in Litchfield Park tonight, or it might be something else. We'll check. We will check on that tomorrow, but we can't do anything about it today. So, if at all possible, if you'd like to speak, it would be helpful if you could push the little raise your hand button, and then and the way to turn it off is to push it again. So like right now, the vice mayor's raise his hand button is on, but nobody else's is that I can see. So I'd ask the vice mayor to turn his off.
I cannot get it to go off. Every time I hover over it, the mute and the more button come up over the top of it, and I can't get to it. It's underneath that.
All right. Then we'll note that as a problem, and if you want.
Okay, I was able to click.
Yeah, we turned it off for you. So does everybody understand this raise your hand concept? Just nod your heads or something. There's no easy way to do this. So if you have a comment,
and they said yes.
if you have a comment to make, and I haven't called on you, just speak up, and hopefully I'll hear you, and we'll work through this. With that, we're going to try to get started. So we're going to call a meeting to order, and we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance, and I want you to all stand up and join with me. Are you ready? Oh, wrong side. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so we have an official meeting. Just a couple of comments before we get started. Again, if you want to be recognized, the best way to do it is to push that raise your hand button, because then I can see it and I can just call on you.
Wow.
If that doesn't work,
way behind.
yeah, the way behind.
We had set back down here.
Now,
As slow as I move, I'm still way in front of the video. So you'll just have to kind of play it by ear. Hopefully my voice is coming out pretty much current time. So if you want to be recognized, please raise your hand button. And if that doesn't work for some reason, then let me know that you'd have something to say, and I will do my best to get to call on you. Realizing that I can't see all of you, so it'll be a challenge, at different times. We have cut the agenda down as much as we can so that it can be a efficient and short meeting. And so we'll try to get through it and learn from it, and then next time we do this, it'll work a little better. The first item is our council member reports. So I'm going to call on Councilman Romack first. Do you have anything you'd like to say, Councilman?
I've been in a couple of Zoom meetings, and they work well. I just hope that we're able to get this one ironed out.
It will get better. Councilman Donahue.
Yeah, we're the Hughes. Anyway, not really anything to report. I think we're all just hanging out in the neighborhood. So.
All right, Councilman Brainerd Watson. We may have lost her.
she's
Nothing really to report. Getting tired of the four walls.
Yeah, let's all vote on that. Okay, Councilman Rostosi, I think, is not here, correct?
Tom's here.
So then, oh, you are
Nothing to
here,
report,
okay.
sir.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a whole lot. I'm just glad everybody's safe. I know we're trying to get the city running again.
it's interesting. Paul is real time. The mayor's way behind.
Maybe Paul's nominee is good.
Hey, Sonny,
Okay, I'm sorry, John, what was that?
I'm just telling Sonny that we can hear him. He needs to mute.
Mute your device, Sonny.
I just did.
Okay, so he's been muted. We won't hear him anymore. But I think I got everybody on the council. Just a couple of comments. This agenda, as I said, has been cut down to be the bare minimum that we need to get through the business that we need to conduct at this meeting. So there's a number of things that are normally on the agenda that you will not see on this agenda, including things like call the community. The community in this type of format does not have a right to speak. The only time in this kind of a format in which the community will speak is if we have a public hearing, and that will present its own set of challenges for us as we figure out how to get an individual community member unmuted that wants to speak and allow them to speak to us, but we'll work through that. There are several things on the agenda tonight that are ratifications of things that were done since the state of emergency was declared and because we missed our meeting in March. Those are things like ratifying the purchase of the playground equipment. That has been done on the advice of council because the process we were using in the past of having council members have the ability to comment on these minor capital items before the contract was signed, that process may very well violate the open meeting law. So for that reason, we're going to go back and ratify as council through the consent agenda to ratify those decisions that were already made. Before I go too much further, I want to compliment the staff for an excellent job that they've done, and I want the council to understand what an excellent job the staff has done at keeping the city operating, even though City Hall is closed and even though many of the staff are working from home as much as they can. So an example is when you call in on the phone, you call City Hall, you will talk generally to Emily, but she's not here. She's at home, but she receives the call and she answers it, and she's able to get the correct person that you want to talk to hooked up with you when you call in. So it's staff organization like that that's been put into place between the city manager and the various staff members meeting to try to figure out how can they do their jobs and keep the city hall open and functioning, but still minimize the number of staff that we have to have here and minimize the potential risk in terms of catching COVID-19. We should give a special recognition to Terry and Stephanie, who are responsible for the process we're going through tonight on this videotape. It's kind of interesting because I can see how far the video is behind my voice. So I'm telling you that they have done a tremendous job, having very little experience in IT, but they've been able to get the Zoom system at least working to some extent. It's not perfect, but we're making a lot of progress. And so we want to thank Terry and Stephanie for their hard work. And we also want to recognize the Public Works Department. Public Works has split up into two different crews so that they're able to work in a way that doesn't require them to have too much really close individual personal contact and try to maintain their safety. And they have been able to keep up on the maintenance generally of everything in the city. The city, after being shut down basically for almost two months, the city still looks really good. Maybe it was shut down for 6 weeks, but it still looks really good. And the reason for that is the public works staff has really stepped up and they've done a very good job. And we have had comments actually from residents during this last 6 weeks complimenting the city staff and particularly Public Works on different things that they were able to accomplish. So we've been very fortunate in that our city staff has done a very, very good job at being able to continue to operate the essential functions of the city, but have City Hall itself shut down. I even saw today as I was driving through town, I saw our city engineer Woody out inspecting a construction site and working with somebody on the site. And I don't know if it was about moving a sidewalk or putting a hole in the ground or exactly what they were discussing, but they were having a very in-depth conversation in the middle of the street talking about something about this particular project. So staff has done a very good job at continuing to operate the city. The other thing that has been discussed among staff is CapEx. We have approved a number of minor capital items, and they're minor enough that they don't really impact our budget much one way or the other. On more major items, those will come to the council, but the pace of them coming to the council will probably be slowed because we don't really fully understand the financial impact of this shutting down, at least partial shutdown of our economy, how that's going to impact our city sales tax, other than we know it's going to definitely put a dent in it. So we will slow down our CapEx until we have a better understanding of what our real needs are in the reserve area, with the exception of things that we can fund with restricted funds like HERF. So HERF money doesn't do us any good in general fund expenditures. So if we have projects that we can continue to fund using HERF, then we'll continue to do that throughout this period of time when the economy is essentially shut down. Those things will be coming. They will be coming to you as we operate these meetings, in the future. The last thing is the last kind of a notice is we're going to be calling a special meeting. It will be within the next 2 or 3 days. It will have only one topic on it, and I say one topic. As of today, there'll just be one topic, and that is the issue of the cross-dock facility that's being proposed on Camelback Road in the location of the former Falcon Golf Course. There has been extremely significant community opposition to that facility. There's also united opposition within the staff, particularly Woody Scouten, as to that facility's impact on our city. There are questions about the legality of what the county is trying to do in terms of their process that they're following. So for a number of reasons, I believe the council will want to go on record as opposing that development. And so we're going to have a special meeting this week because the first planning meeting from the county is next Thursday. And we want to make sure that we can say to the county at that meeting that this is the position of the city. So before I do that, I want to have an opportunity for the council to weigh in on that. So we will provide council with a variety of written materials, and then we'll have a special meeting like this to discuss that issue and see if the council agrees that we want to formally oppose it as a city. Finally, you may notice if you get out and about in the evenings at all, you may notice that some of the city buildings or city facilities in different places, maybe some places in the park, will have a blue light on them. That is part of the governor's blue light program, in which the governor, through the state, is urging all of the cities and counties to join with the governor in lighting various facilities with the color blue. And it's to recognize the sacrifices of our first responders and our medical professionals. So you will see at least City Hall lit with the color blue. And that'll, if somebody asks you why is all these blue lights being seen in the city, that's what it's about. So that's everything I have to report before we get involved with the meeting itself. The next item on the agenda is a response to call to community. Mr. Carter Wilson asked about the installation of a parking lot near Staggs Park. We actually have that project programmed in the city's CIP budget, but it will require an agreement that needs to be negotiated between the church and the city concerning use of that park. We will be working on that as we get through this coronavirus issue and we get back to normal. We'll be working on negotiating that agreement and then getting that programmed into actual be executed as part of our CIP program. The next is Dr. Charnetsky came and asked us about putting up a solid wall instead, or at least or either a solid wall or a very high view fence that would block the view of the new Dignity Health emergency room. That is not in our budget at this point, but I am going to refer that over to the Parks and Rec Commission for consideration. They can take a look at how that might impact that park and see if there is something that they believe that they would like to recommend to council. So we will take a look at that. And finally, Mrs. McMaster asked us about replacing trees and plants along our pathways, and also cleaning up some of the mess from some of the dogs that use that area. We will take a look at that. Clearly, we have a program where we do replace trees and plants, and we want it because we want to keep the park looking good, and that we will take a look at those along the pathways that she mentioned. That brings us to our presentations, and I'm sure, unless there's an objection from council, if I see a bunch of raised hands, I'm not going to read all these proclamations individually. And I'm sure many of you would like to hear them directly, but because of this shortened process or program, we're going to just mention the fact that we have proclamations declaring Arbor Day, which is April 24th, Arizona Education Progress Meter Day to support the statewide attainment of education goals by 2030. We have Building Safety Month, which is May of 2020, and Municipal Clerks Week, which is the week of May 3rd through 9th. So those proclamations have been signed, and if you'd like to see them, we'll be happy to get you a copy. That brings us now to the consent agenda, item 6. We have 6A through, looks like F. Is there anyone on council who would like to take any item off of the consent agenda? Okay, I don't see any raised hands. So then we have to unmute someone, multiple ones, if they want to, because we need a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Motion moved. This is Tom.
Second.
I second.
So it was a motion by Tom? Yes, Tom, did you make the motion? Yep. Okay, so the motion moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
I don't know, since we have them on, the Attorney General ruled that for people participating on a phone in these kind of meetings have to be polled individually. And probably we need to do that here. Yeah, so we're going to have to do a roll call vote. So we'll start out with Councilman Rostosi. What's your vote?
Aye.
Councilman Romack?
You're muted, John.
John, you have to unmute.
Can you unmute him?
Unmute. Aye.
Okay. Councilman Brenner Watson?
Aye.
Councilman Donahue?
Aye.
Mr. Vice Mayor?
Aye.
Okay, I believe that's, no, Councilman Clare.
Aye.
Okay, I believe that's everyone, and so it passes unanimously. Now we'll go into business. We have a few ordinances that we need to get considered and hopefully moving along. The first one is an ordinance concerning mobile food vendors. Matthew, do you have a report?
Yes, sir, I do. Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Can everybody hear Matthew? Hopefully, yes. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Our current city ordinance in relation to food trucks was written in 2012 due to a new state law that was passed in 2019, or we are currently out of compliance because of that. So basically, this ordinance would change that. It would bring us back into compliance. Long story short, there was someone that owned a food truck that got Congress to pass new legislation. The biggest thing this will mean to you guys will be that effectively a food truck can park in any public parking space. Obviously, the people that will be most concerned with this is people that have brick and mortar restaurants, because under the new law, you could literally park 20 feet from the front door of a restaurant as long as it's a legal parking space. They will have to come in and get a new license from the city, a business license and a food truck license. We will have those fees on the council agenda for May for approval, if you guys choose to. That's the biggest thing on this. Again, it's a food truck ordinance where they can come out, they can set these up, because in our current ordinance, they're only allowed if approved by council or as part of a community event. So right now, again, we are in violation of state law because of our law. So this would fix those issues. A few other things it does require, they do have to be inspected by a fire department. They do have to carry, of course, an insurance documentation. They have to provide trash, lighting, etc. In commercial areas, it only allows it in residential areas if the property owner allows it. Like if you want to have a birthday party, if you want to have a food truck for a birthday party, you could do that. Other than that, it's only for commercial, for non-residential areas. But again, I think the most concerned people will be brick and mortar restaurants. But again, it's one parking space. Per state law, you can't say what spaces they can park in, but we can limit them to how many spaces they have. Again, they can only have one space. They can only be there for 24 hours. They can't be there for days on end. But this business license, again, would be good for 1 year. One interesting effect this will have on our special events is they could park just outside of our special city events and they could park a food truck right there. And there's not a thing we can do about it. Now, granted, we could expand the limits of how far out our events goes, but that's something to consider. Again, this is just the first reading of this ordinance. The second reading would be in May. Any questions on this ordinance so far?
Before I open it up to council, just two questions. One is this ordinance would bring us into compliance with state law, which we're required to do. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
And then when you say one space, most food trucks are not going to fit into one space in front of any of our restaurants because the spaces are shorter than a food truck. So what do we do if they don't fit in a space?
Let me look at it 1 second, sir. Susan, do you know an answer to that question off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, I do not.
Okay. I've got the ordinance here. Give me 1 second, sir.
Well, a legal parking space is defined as an area designated for vehicle parking in the city right of way that may be paved or unpaved, delineated by road surface markings. It does not include a parking space in a parking lot on property owned by the city. So it does not include your city parking lot. Matthew, I think the answer to the question is under 8-7-6, but I don't know exactly where it is.
It looks like it's under section I, under parking. So 8-7-6 under parking.
Well, it says that a mobile food unit, including a semi-permanent structure used or associated with the mobile food unit, may use no more than one legal parking space unless the mobile food vendor has a separate agreement with the city to use additional legal parking spaces or parking spaces on city property. So, and this agreement, this was based on the model that was negotiated between the league and the food truck industry, and they agreed to that provision. I didn't make that one up.
All right, well, that would be a good thing for us to be cognizant of as we try to enforce this if there's somebody trying to park in front of one of our current restaurants, because I don't think the truck will fit in that space. Anybody on the council have a question? If you raise your hand, I'll recognize you, or just say something, I'll recognize you.
I can't find the blue hand to push, so I'll just raise my real hand.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Vice Mayor. I got your hand.
Page 82, paragraph H, subparagraph 1.
I'm sorry, which section?
It's on page 82, paragraph 8, subsection.
I'm on a hard copy. Do you have a section number?
It's paragraph H, subsection 1. And 8 point.
H residential area?
Yes. As I read this, it says that anybody who lives in a residential area can authorize a food truck to park in their driveway 6 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and conduct business. Does that comply with state statute? Is that what we want?
The statute does not address that. This was negotiated this was part of the model ordinance.
Can you look and check? Yes, we'll get hung if we pass something that allows trucks to park in people's yards 7 days a week and sell tacos.
I will look at
And
that.
particularly Airbnb.
The ordinance itself is really short. And I don't think that was in it. So I will look at that. Because we're just introducing this tonight.
Right, and we may want to go beyond the model ordinance and put something in there that stops that. So they can be the 6 hours within a 24-hour period, one time per month or something, or one time every 6 months.
Or maybe a restriction that they cannot be there to actually sell product, but they can be there for a party when the food is sold in bulk or something.
All right, so the city attorney will take that back. Is there any other questions or comments from the council?
If I may?
Yes. Does Councilman Romack?
Yeah, yeah. I personally, I'm this just in general that they could park anywhere close to our existing restaurants that, you know, would have they have enough trouble with paying the rent or the lease or anything on their brick and mortar establishment. I happen to like food trucks, but I think that this is kind of a slap in the face for any of those new people, even just people, but new people coming into our community. I understand that this is just being introduced, but I'll tell you now, until there's provisions to eliminate the direct competition, I would be opposed to this.
If I could just say that I do have the statute in front of me. Section 9-485.01 B2 says that a city or town may not require a food truck to operate a specific distance from the perimeter of an existing commercial establishment or restaurant, except if it's required by a building or fire code. So that was one of the things that the food truck industry actually got into the legislation, and that's part of what, well, possibly what drove the legislation, some of it.
Is that something that we comply with?
I can say that again?
Is that something that we would have to comply with or can write our own?
No, that is a prohibition in the state statute.
There is another state statute that you should always remember and familiarize yourself with. And that statute says that if we do anything as a city that is in direct contradiction of what we've been prescribed by the state, so we do something that's completely against what the state says is going to happen, then the state can take our state shared revenue. And all they have to do is go to the Attorney General and ask the Attorney General to certify that, yes, what we've done is against state statute, and they take our state shared revenue. So there's severe penalties to the extent that we adopt ordinances or take actions as a city that violates state law.
But Tom, we have Susan Goodwin representing us.
What's that?
We have Susan Goodwin representing us.
That's true. She can represent us, but I can tell you that the city of Tempe and the city of Phoenix and the city of Tucson tried to go against that, and they quickly backed down.
Tom, there's some further notations on the parking on page 83. That a mobile food unit shall abide by all parking regulations, including posted time limits. So if we restrict by time limits, would that if they're not allowed to be there in certain business hours, would that keep us within the framework of the law?
We can't restrict them during normal business hours, or we can't let anybody park there. But we can restrict them potentially on the amount of time that they're there. So if all of the parking was restricted to 2 hours or 90 minutes, then you could have the same restrictions, I would think, on the food truck. In the same way that if the food truck won't fit within the normal amount of distance or space that we have designated for parking of cars, then I think you can prevent them from parking in those spaces. So, but it has to be a rule that we apply across the board, not just to food trucks.
Question?
Yes, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Susan, how does our zoning code, such as in residential areas, is it preempted by this somehow?
The zoning code has minimum parking space requirements. I don't think there's anything in your zoning code that conflicts with this.
Operating a business in a residential
Well,
zone?
that's where that was the only thing I could think of, but let me look at that one too.
Thank you.
But you can't,
Oh.
let me look at that one.
So if we have an area, and the easiest example is Cache, where a food truck won't fit in a driveway because it'll be extending across the sidewalk. Will that prohibit the food truck from being there?
Yes,
Tom?
I think so.
It,
Yeah, I think so.
it does say
So-
further in the statutes, they have to have 20 feet of right of way.
But I'll look at this more closely with respect to the zoning code and the whole issue of prohibiting in residential areas, if that's where you want to go.
I think the sense that I'm getting from at least several council members, we want to restrict the unlimited ability of the food trucks to operate in a way that is detrimental to our businesses or that violates the spirit of our residential areas as much as possible. So you need to take a look and see what we can do to try to make sure we can enforce reasonable rules to make sure that our residential areas are not messed up because of the operation of food trucks. Or that we don't have food trucks that are unfairly competing with our local businesses.
The statute does say that the city may prohibit or restrict a food truck from operating in an area zoned for residential use or within 250 feet of the area zoned for residential use. So I'm not exactly sure how this provision got into the model ordinance, but I don't think you need it.
Well, if that's the case, then let's just take out the part that allows them to operate there and say they can't be there within 250 feet.
Okay.
And then the next person who wants to have a birthday party for their grandchild and wants to have a food truck, they can come down and ask us for permission, correct?
Well, do you want, I think that would have to be in the ordinance. You just can't do it at your discretion.
Yeah, I don't know if we've ever had anybody use a food truck in that way, but that, it certainly wouldn't be surprising if that came up.
We have. It hasn't been a problem.
Or a wedding, or a wedding.
Yeah.
wedding.
Oh, yeah. So we probably want to allow them, to go into the residential area for things that are, that are parties or weddings or whatever. But we want to make sure that we go in and set up and do business generally in the residential area.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments from council?
One suggestion I'd mentioned before, Susan, was possibly prohibiting item by item sale in residential areas, but allowing them to show up at a party, with one ticket being given to the party sponsor or something.
Just one, you mean one food truck per event, per house?
And one bill.
One bill.
Yeah. The party sponsor pays them. They don't go, you don't have somebody out there,
Oh,
50 people lining up to pay 50, to buy 50 tacos separately. You got 50 tacos passed out of a truck and one bill goes to the party sponsor.
Essentially, they would cater.
Yes.
okay, I understand.
That's just a thought.
I have a question.
Councilman Clare.
Thank you, Tom. Are there any restrictions on alcohol?
I think they have to comply with the liquor license laws. There's nothing in the statute about that. And I don't think there's anything in the ordinance about that.
I'd be surprised if food trucks can sell alcohol.
Yeah. I think, I don't know a whole lot about liquor licenses, but I don't think they're mobile.
Any
I'll
other questions or
look at
comments?
that.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we need a motion to introduce this ordinance.
So moved.
Who was that?
So moved.
Who made the motion?
Ann.
Ann? Okay, Councilman Donahue made the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Brainerd.
Okay, there's a second by Councilman Brainerd Watson. Any further discussion? If not, we'll go through a roll call vote. We'll start with Councilman Donahue.
Yes.
Councilman Clare.
Yes.
Councilman Rostosi.
Yes.
Councilman Romack.
Introduce it, yes.
Vice Mayor.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Did I miss anybody?
Brainerd. Aye.
Okay, I missed Councilman Watson?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So we have a unanimous adoption of introducing the ordinance. Now we'll go on to item B, which is introduction of an ordinance on commercial truck restrictions. Mr. Williams.
Yes, sir. Mayor and council, as you know, we've been discussing some commercial truck restrictions. Currently, there is a city ordinance on the books that already limits truck restrictions to ingress and egress, or of course, the shortest route in, the shortest route out for city deliveries. In the current city books, the city truck route is Litchfield Road. This ordinance, if approved, would change that to Dysart, not Litchfield. As you know, we're discussing putting roundabouts in Litchfield Road, and trucks wouldn't work very well through there when that time comes. So that would be the big change as far as that goes, would be to make Dysart the truck route. Again, you already have truck restrictions in place. It would also put the restrictions in place that we required for city center. And those are only for city center. No trucks over 40 feet in length are larger than class 6. And deliveries only allowed between 12 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. Again, that's only during city center. For those of you that are wondering, the 40-foot clause is because we're going to have some roundabouts in there, and we don't want a truck going to get stuck and not be able to get out. So that's why they'd be limited to 40 feet within the city center. But again, the rest of it is Dysart would be the truck route. This would require signage at the major intersections in the city, but there wouldn't be that much cost as far as that goes.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions concerning the commercial truck restriction ordinance?
Tom,
Who is this? Councilman Romack? Yes, Councilman Romack.
oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question would be, does this have an impact on the wigwam in any way? And has there been any discussion, Matthew?
No, sir, it would not, because the ordinance allows for ingress and egress. For deliveries that are happening within the city, that's fine. Sorry. This only affects, we're trying to stop through truck traffic, so to speak. So our businesses in town can still, in the city can still continue to get deliveries, but we want to stop being a pass-through for truck traffic other than on Dysart Road.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Mr. Vice Mayor, was that you?
Yes, I got 3 questions. Back to your midnight to 9:30 a.m. I'd like Susan to look at that and make sure that we are allowing Horny's restaurants to have deliveries sometime other than between midnight and 9:30, and the Wigwam also, because I'm a little concerned about maybe some of the way this is worded. So if you get a chance, take a look at that. The second problem I'm wondering about is on page 85, where it says we're going to sign areas so that there's no through traffic. We struggle with how we're going to sign some of that, such as if you are 303 eastbound into Litchfield Park, by the time you get to the city where we could put a sign, there's no place to turn around. You've got no choice but to continue forward. So you think about that. And then,
You know, Mr. Vice Mayor, actually, these big trucks, they have people who are supposed to go out and scout their routes just for things like those kinds of signs and for low bridges. It's the same situation.
good.
So if we're going to maintain that prohibition actually and start being serious about it to keep these semi trucks, it could be 2,000 or 4,000 a day coming down Camelback, then we're going to have to put up a sign and we're going to have to start enforcing it.
Okay.
And word will get out.
My third question is maybe we want to think about some kind of modest sign. I count that we have maybe 15 entrances into the city. If we're going to have an enforceable ordinance, everybody needs to know where the boundaries are that this ordinance is now being enforced. So maybe some kind of simple sign at those 15 entrances that says City of Litchfield Park. That would help in a lot of other regards also, but this, the truckers are going to need to know, when they're actually in the city.
You mean like gateway signs, sir?
Yeah, but something, I'm not talking about anything big. We've got a few of them around the city already, but it would be nice. And maybe this goes to Parks and Rec to look at, that kind of thing and to come up with a design with something that's small and modest that hits those roughly 15 entrances.
And we have some of those entrances already signed with that type of sign that you're talking about. But we would definitely, once we get this ordinance amended and in place, we'll put signs up on all the entrances. So it's very clear that we don't want through trucks going through the neighborhoods, period.
Right, and maybe with like Parks and Rec doing something that's, that's acceptable as opposed to some metal sign.
That's fine. We can see what kind of a design they can come up with.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the council?
Tom, I got a question.
Councilman Clare.
Thank you, sir. There's trucking mapping software that trucking companies use to get their people in the right areas. And I wonder if there's a way to contact, even if it's just Google and Apple, to let them know that we've turned these into no truck zones, so that as anyone's using these maps, they'll know that this is a no truck zone.
We can have staff check on that.
You already have a truck route ordinance, a truck restriction ordinance in effect currently. It's not probably in front of you because we're just amending a certain portion of it, but you already have a truck travel ordinance, a restriction that.
It really isn't enforced.
Oh.
So this is gonna be a change because we're going, the whole idea is we actually intend to enforce it going forward.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? If not, is there a motion to introduce ordinance 20-242 on commercial truck restrictions?
Paul's trying to get your attention.
Who is? Oh, Mr. Vice Mayor. You want to introduce it or you want to say something?
You need to mute Paul.
You're muted, sir.
You're muted.
There we go. How's that? Yeah, I'll make the motion to introduce it, but I want to make a comment also.
All right.
We do have some signs at some entrances that deal with vehicles of certain sizes, I believe, and parking overnight. They can't be parked overnight. So somehow this needs to be worked in with whatever put those things up.
Correct. So we have a motion to introduce. Is there a second?
Second. Brainerd.
That was
Me,
Brainerd
Lisa.
Watson. Okay. We'll go through a roll call vote. Unless there's any further discussion, we'll go through a roll call vote. We'll start with Mr. Claire.
Yes.
Ms. Brainerd Watson.
Aye.
Ms. Donahue.
Yes.
Mr. Rososi.
Yes.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Aye.
Mr. Romack.
Aye.
And I say aye. Did I miss anybody? I don't think so. So that's unanimously introduced ordinance 20-242. Next item is ordinance 20-243, which is floodplain regulation. Do we have Woody with us?
Okay, there I am.
Yep, you've been unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. First thing I want to say is I don't make it a habit of standing in the middle of the street on a regular basis, so. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
It wasn't exactly the middle of the street. Maybe I may have overstated that a little bit.
Okay, I was being careful then. Yeah, this is a bit of housekeeping. The FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, runs the National Flood Insurance Program, and for us to maintain our membership in the National Flood Insurance Program, we need to stay current with all of the floodplain updates that FEMA issues. So there is a new flood insurance study that has been adopted in Maricopa County, and that has changed some of the floodplain maps, and we need to update our code to recognize that that is the new flood insurance study and the new maps that we will be enforcing, even though this update had no effect or no impact on the city of Litchfield Park. It was somewhere else in the county, but because we're on a map that was revised, we have to update, or we have to adopt the updated maps. And again, this is just to keep us in, well, it's two things. One is that we have to manage our floodplains against those new maps and those regulations. But we also want to maintain our membership in the National Flood Insurance Program because it provides for affordable flood insurance for our residents. And I'll just ask if there's any questions.
Questions from the council? One question, Mr. Scouten, how many areas are in the floodplain that are in the park now?
Oh boy, off the top of my head, I'd say there's about 5, maybe 4 or 5.
And for those areas that are in a floodplain, for the residents to be protected from a flood, they have to have federal flood insurance. Is that correct?
Yes, if they were in a floodplain. Actually, in the city, the only structure that is located within an official floodplain is the Scout Lodge. There are no homes or businesses or other structures within the city that are located within official floodplains. So what this really does is it allows people who, for example, the Peninsula condos who suffered from some flooding a few years ago, it allows them to purchase affordable flood insurance if they want to. They're not required to, so that they can have protection in the future.
All right. Any other questions from the council? If not, is there a motion to introduce ordinance 20-243?
Second.
Is there a second? It was the Vice Mayor.
Yes,
We have a second?
and seconded.
Ann.
Ann, okay. Councilman Donahue, second. All right, so any further discussion? If not, we'll go through a roll call vote, starting with Councilman Brainerd Watson.
Sorry.
Was that an aye or a sorry?
It was both. Took me too long. Aye.
Okay. Councilman Rostosi,
Yes.
Councilman Donahue,
Yes.
Councilman Romack,
Aye.
Councilman Clare,
Yes.
Vice Mayor,
Aye.
and I say aye, so I think that's everyone. The ordinance is introduced. Final item of business, discussion of the aquatic fee increase. Matthew.
Mayor and council, when our pool does reopen this summer, we'll see when it actually reopens. Due to rising minimum wage laws, we're currently losing money for party rentals. Because the more people you have in the pool at a party, the more lifeguards you have to have, 25, 50, 75, you have to have more lifeguards. And again, because of rising minimum wage cost, we don't bring enough from the rental to justify the employees. So this would correct that situation again once the pool reopens. This would only be for party rentals. There are different rates for during regular hours and during after hours, as you'll see. But again, this would correct that issue. If we stuck with our current rental rates, we would lose $702 a year based on the 2023 numbers. If we looked at our current rentals per year, obviously rentals go up and down, that's an average. But if the recommended fees are accepted, we would make an annual profit of $293 on pool rentals. So again, it's not a large profit, but it's not a loss. And again, this would only be for pool party rentals. Again, once the aquatic center reopens.
All right, any questions from the council?
I do.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we do a sliding fee scale that would allow us to recoup more expenses from larger groups?
It is sliding. There's different rates depending on how large the group is.
Okay.
Yeah, it depends on the number of people.
That's correct.
It's 70 to 130 an hour in the packet. The very last page.
It actually goes up to as high as 150 an hour, 180 an hour.
Oh, yeah.
In 2020, it'd be 130, but by the time you get to 2023, it's 180. So it is sliding both, throughout the years and depending on the size of the party. Any other questions from council? If not, is there a motion to adopt resolution 20-464 concerning aquatic fees?
This is Tom. I'll make the motion.
This is
Second.
Ron.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Ron.
Ron? All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Unless there's any further discussion, we'll start voting. Councilman Romack.
Aye.
Councilman Brainerd Watson.
Aye.
Councilman Rostosi.
Aye.
Councilman Clare.
Aye.
Councilman Donahue.
Aye. Yes.
Vice Mayor.
Aye.
I say aye. Did I miss anybody? All right, passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
With that, that concludes our business. If there's nothing further, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Is that, Councilman Womack, I think. Second from
Ann. Donahue.
Councilman from Donahue, second. All those in favor, please say aye. Councilman Womack.
Aye.
Aye.
Councilman Clare.
Aye.
Councilman Brainerd Watson.
Aye.
Councilman Donahue.
Aye.
Councilman Romack.
Aye.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Aye.
Councilman Rostosi.
Aye.
And I say aye. We're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
all your forbearance, and we got through our first video conference meeting. It's a new milestone. We're gonna put up a
Cheers.
little plaque somewhere for it. Good night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yay, we did it.